Hello, everyone. Welcome to Up Your Confidence. I'm your host, Lizette Zuno, and I'm delighted today for our conversation. You all know that we try to talk about confidence as much as possible. And today, I am more than thrilled to have my guest with me. We're going to talk about the science of confidence. But before we get started, let me read her bio to you. So I'm excited to have Alyssa Dver with us today. Alyssa is the CEO of American Confidence Institute. She's a TEDx and Boston Best speaker. She co-hosts the podcast In Confidence Face Your Workplace, a very interesting podcast that I really highly recommend. She's also the chair of ERG Leadership Alliance, which directly improve workplace diversity and inclusion. Using basic brain science, Alyssa has helped over 350,000 to reclaim their confidence and be able to coach other to clients include Spotify, Wayfair, Panera, Pepsi, Staple, US Tennis Association, and the US Air Force. A lot of clients. My favorite part is Alyssa is a best-selling author, seven-time best-selling author, I may add. And her latest book, her seventh book in 2020, was about confidence is a choice, real science. Superhero Impact was endorsed by experts at Wharton, Harvard, MIT, Yale, UC Berkeley, and top business thought leader around the country. Alyssa teaches every semester at Penn Innovation Center. She's an advisor at MIT Trust Center. She judged the Stephen Women in Business Best Employee Annual Award, and she's constantly interviewed by media and author, as you can imagine. With great joy, she also coaches startups, nonprofit, and executive, and she is a proud mom of two very tall son and a very cocky rescue pooch. I am delighted, Alyssa, to have you here today. How are you doing?
Oh, you know what? This is a dream to talk to another fellow confidence crusader. So, and Lizette, you are just such an inspiration to so many as well. So I am so grateful.
Thank you, thank you. We're gonna get started because I always like to share how I meet my guests, and then I'm gonna ask you one question about your story. So I met you through the Dell Woman Entrepreneur, and you had a webinar, and right away, I was like, I gotta have Alyssa on the Up Your Confidence. I want to bring this conversation to our listeners. So I'm interested about your story because I always want to know what got you into confidence and why it's something that you are so passionate about.
I appreciate that. It's interesting in the sense that I think we all come back to things that were sparked at us a long time ago, and you can kind of figure out what the thread is your whole life. But my initial thread was that I was attracted to motivational theory and what makes people tick. I just was riveted by it. And at the time that I was going to college, the only place that it seemed to apply in the track that I was in marketing. So I became a marketing executive, was very successful in that, did well in corporate tech companies and so forth, startups and the like. And so I was doing that as a career, studying this stuff on the side, kind of almost as a hobby. About 12 years ago now, when my older son was diagnosed with a neurological condition, it literally blew my world apart. And what I mean by that is the doctors were telling me he was going to become paralyzed and they didn't know how to help him. They said that it was kind of inevitable, genetically caused. And so I went into a real spiral in terms of feeling guilty as a mom, helpless, didn't know what to do with this information. And the more doctors I talked to, the less confident I became because they didn't really know much about this kind of condition. They couldn't tell me what to do or if there was anything that could be done. And the things that they would joke about literally was that they would say, well, you can always have brain surgery. I mean, it was horrible. And what I somehow miraculously realized is that I was entitled to go figure this out, even though I didn't have a medical degree. I didn't, I certainly wasn't a neurologist, world renowned or otherwise, and pieced it all together and started really learning about how the brain worked. And so was able to really find people who could tell me more and enough about the brain that necessarily weren't the most renowned doctors in the world. But the more I learned and pieced it together, because what did I have to lose, right? I would talk to anybody in different countries. I would go and maybe they were medical doctors or natural healers. But I started to, again, put it all together. And then all of a sudden, the renowned neurologists started calling me because they never explored these other alternatives. They never explored other cross-functional, even medical areas. And it started to make sense. And now today, everybody's talking about things like mindfulness and how do you get, present and the things that happen to our brain in terms of being overwhelmed and having decision fatigue. But 8-10 years ago, I was starting to put this all together. And so, the beautiful story is my son is wonderful. I won't say that he's completely cured, but he's not only fully functional, he is the captain of the college tennis team. He does all kinds of things that none of the doctors ever thought he would be able to do. And then I started the Institute because people were so fascinated in this as it applied to human motivation that here we are now 6 years in the Institute. And we've brought, as you said earlier, about 350,000 people so far, the beautiful science of confidence.
Awesome, awesome. I'm so touched, that something so drastic that happened, you didn't let go, right there, you demonstrate to that journey your own confidence, how you don't take no for an answer and you actually go find the answer. And by you finding the answer, you are now able to impact so many other people. So just on a personal note, thank you for that. I'm sure you get thank you every day, but I just want to say thank you. And because for me, I have my own journey on how I grab into the whole confidence journey. But for me, I always feel like confidence is a muscle that you have to work on every day. So when I learned about that, it's actually a science. I was like, this is another level of of learning, right? So let me also get into that. So let's get into like, what is the science behind confidence from your opinion, obviously? What is the science behind having confidence?
Okay, well, this is a very big question. I'm going to kind of boil it down to the essence and, of course, ask away. And people who have questions beyond what we're going to talk about, I'm always loving to have dialogue online too. So the core of confidence is that it is a decision. You decide if you're confident about something. And you can't be sort of confident. You don't feel confident. You either are confident or you're not, because you're making a decision, yes or no. So I'm confident it's going to rain tomorrow, or I'm confident that the stock market's going to go up, or I'm confident that I can do something or not, right? Now that's very academic, if you will, very black and white, but at the core is a decision. Neurologically, scientifically, we do make that decision. And sometimes we don't know we're making the decision because it's subconscious, where we say, I'm going to go do a podcast. I can do a podcast. I'm confident I can do a podcast. You make a decision. It's very conscious. But if you are about to, for example, go on stage and do a presentation, or you have to go into a meeting or ask for a raise, or have a conversation that may be a little confidence challenging, you do make that decision in your head. And what happens, Lizette, is that when you make the decision that you are or you're not confident about something, it either goes into the lower part of your brain. Your reactions and your behaviors subsequently come out. We talk about lizard brain or the brain stem in terms of the very kind of aggressive or shy, defensive, protective behaviors that we see in people. Or you make the decision to go into the beautiful part of your brain called the prefrontal, which is right behind your forehead. And that part of your brain is where all your logic is, where all your ability to correlate and combine information and think creatively. So when you're faced with a challenge, something that's challenging your confidence, if you're able to recognize that moment, that amygdala moment, we say that very split second opportunity to say, you know what, I can do this. you put it in your prefrontal. If you're not paying attention or you're otherwise reactive, it's going to go down into the base of your brain. And subsequently, you're not going to act from a place of confidence because that behavior is there to protect you.
I like the fact that you said that it's a decision, because I'm an engineer by trade, so I'm a really 1-0 person, and that's something I can gravitate to. It's a decision, and it's a decision that you have to make every time in every situation. It's a decision. I wake up, I make the decision that I'm gonna go to this meeting, but when I get to the meeting, I might be a little bit, not confident, so I have to make another decision. So it's like a collection of decisions. So what do you think, because I like to talk about confidence is something that is personal, it's a personal journey. And I think maybe it's a similar thing that we're talking about, but I want to get clarity on that. When you say that confidence is a choice, so it's a choice that I'm making. So what triggered me to make those choices, and why some folks don't make that choice to be confident?
Well, through our lifetimes, we acquire all kinds of data, right? You're an engineer, so we'll get a little geeky here, but we acquire data. We maybe we go to one of the classic examples is you walk up to a stove when you're little, you touch it, you get burned. All of a sudden you have data, stove hot, don't touch, right? That's data. Somebody, maybe you went on to try to sport, and you got on the court or the field, and you weren't very good, and somebody was like, Lizette, you stink at this, right? Now all of a sudden you have more data. I stink at that. And you acquire these things, and they actually build neural pathways in your brain that form the decision pathways. So then next time you step on that court, you go, oh, you know what? I really stink at this. So you go into that decision process already kind of predestined. You already say, I'm not going to be good at it. Or maybe, you had a bad performance review. Let's bring it up to adult life. This is not just childhood trauma. It can be anything. It can be you've had a bad review and you say, every time I get reviewed, I just don't get the rewards I should. So you build a lot of this data in your brain database, essentially, and then your reaction calls forward, something happens, it calls forward all that data, and you go, oh, you know what? I've been here before, and this is how it plays out. I've seen this movie. I know what's going to happen. So you already have made the decision from that standpoint, rather than saying, you know what, last time I did that, the variables were different. Maybe I wasn't as smart or as strong, or I didn't have as much experience. And subsequently, you don't take in all that logical data, and you just say, oh, I stink at this. I can't do it. So that's when people make a choice, even though, again, they're not really consciously making a choice. Their brain's making a choice for them based on data that they've acquired. Now, that data oftentimes isn't even true, right? If you get a performance review, for example, from a manager who's not a very good manager, that doesn't define, that's not a truthful statement of who you are, but yet we'll use that data as part of our decision bank going forward. And we might, actually pass it on to other people. Terrible example, but it's true for all of us, is how many times, Lizette, do you catch yourself making a decision or saying something or doing something, you're like, oh, my mom or my dad or my aunt said that, right? It's because that's some of the programming that's in our heads. So we do have a lot of that baggage, if you will, those neural pathways that formulate the data that helps us make decisions, even if it's not something we're aware we're doing. Can we overwrite those things? Absolutely. We can form new neural pathways, and that's one of the hottest areas right now in neuroscience now, I should say, for the last several years. Neuroplasticity, we have the ability, we can create new pathways in our brains, new thoughts and beliefs and subsequently behaviors, but it takes a little effort to do that. So somebody who comes in is like, I stink at sports. Yeah, it doesn't mean I'm going to make you better at sports necessarily, right? But you can actually rewire your brain to believe that you are possibly better at sports than you were led to believe.
Yeah, and I think you touched something that I was gonna ask, so I'm gonna ask it because this is something that we do, like the whole self-sabotaging, right? Because you can be confident, and then we spend 1 minute about, okay, maybe I can't do this, and I'm just wondering from a science perspective, in the brain, what is causing us to self-sabotage ourselves so much?
Oh gosh, good question. And self-sabotage is all different flavors. There's things like imposter syndrome, right? Where you know in your heart you're probably as capable as anyone else, but you start to self-doubt it, and you say, well, I'm in this job, or I'm a podcaster and I'm not nearly as good as everyone else, right? But inside you're like, well, maybe I am, maybe I'm not. So form of it, fear of missing out. You're on Facebook, we're zooming live, right?
Yes.
Somebody's like, dang, I'm not half as smart or beautiful as Lizette, right? So we do all these kinds of behaviors. They're all forms of self-sabotage. So part of it is that when our brain detects one of three fears, they are triggers for that decision point. So let me explain a little bit. When you have a moment, anytime that you feel, you perceive you could fail, that's one, fair. Second fear is that you may regret doing something or not doing something. So regret is the second. And the third is the big one, is that you'd be rejected, that people aren't going to like you, that you're not going to fit in. So those three fears in particular are really, really powerful, and they hit our brains, particularly our amygdala, and triggers that decision point. So at that moment where you feel that you're not as good, or you're going to fail, or you're going to regret, or somebody's not going to like you, that's that decision by amygdala moment I referred to earlier will trigger, and then your behavior will follow. So if I all of a sudden think people are going to think I'm not cool for whatever reason, I may go again down into my brainstem and start to get shy. And I don't want to talk in the meeting, or I don't want to give the presentation because I'm afraid, right? If I think I'm going to fail, I get on the sport field and I'm going to look like an idiot. I don't want to fail. I don't want people to make fun of me. Again, I go back into that kind of the caveman lizard brain space where, again, maybe I get very aggressive. People who are nasty, usually it's because they're having confidence crisis and they're acting in their brainstem. So how does this relate to self-sabotage? Well, self-sabotage, look at the examples I gave before, imposter syndrome, FOMO. Both of those trigger a sense of failure, regret, or rejection, right? It depends on the person, it depends on the situation. But if you're on Facebook and you're looking at somebody who's doing something wicked cool, and we say wicked in Boston as a positive, really, really cool, and you're like, oh, I'm stuck at home on a Friday night again, I'm not doing anything, and that person's out doing something awesome. You're having that fear of missing out moment, that FOMO moment. It's because, again, your amygdala has been triggered, failure, regret, or rejection, and you're going, oh, I suck, I stink, I'm no good, all that down into your lizard brain. So it is a natural reaction. It is no different than being triggered by a situation like being on the soccer field, for example, or a presentation. It's that same amygdala moment getting triggered. So a situation can do it. Other people certainly do it to us. And yes, you're right, we do it to ourselves, but the cause, or I should say the result of it is it hits our amygdala and it triggers that decision point for us. And we're not so good about putting it up in our brain and going, you know what, I'm just as good. We just don't do that. We're not trained to do that.
Yeah, so how do we hack our brain? The brain kind of like, hack, I'm an engineer, right? So how do we hack our brain to first be self-aware and say, okay, this is what's happening, and then next step, just like, hack the brain to stop it. What are the technique, or
I love it.
what can we do?
I know, I love it. You said hack, and the other day I was saying to myself, boy, wouldn't it be great if we had the same tools for the computer as we did for our brain, or the other way around, and that we had for our brain, that we have for our computer. Like we could defrag our brain, right? Get all the junk out. Our brain does a pretty good job at night getting a lot of junk out, but certainly not defragging all the stuff that, the cat videos and the dogs this and if we could just get rid of all that waste, all the distraction, all the stuff that we don't need, that would be awesome. Wouldn't it be great if we could like clear our cache and almost like rewind stuff? Like someday somebody needs to invent those tools. So in the meantime, how do we hack stuff? Well, part of it is really being a little bit slower when those feelings come. In other words, when you're starting to feel like I stink, or I can't do it, I'm not as good as she or he, you have those moments of the amygdala screaming at you saying, I don't feel confident, to stop yourself right there and take a deep breath, because breath is a beautiful way of disrupting that amygdala cycle. And then saying to yourself, I have a choice on how I want to feel. Okay, back to this decision point. I can feel like a low life or somebody who does not worth it. I can feel that. That's easy. But I can sit back and go, wait a minute. You know what? I have the same anatomy. I'm a human. I have the same rights. I can do this. And you get logical about it. You have an opportunity to disrupt that downstairs motion and push it up into the beautiful part of your brain where you say, you know what? If she can do it, I can do it. Right? It may be a little scary. I've never done it before, but the one day Lizette decided to do a podcast, she didn't do it that first day. She did it. And now she's doing it regularly. I can do it too. Right? So it's grabbing that fear and using it in a way to stop your reaction and make it much more logical by putting it in the part of your brain that kind of knows better, knows the truth. Now, I'll give you another tip on that, Lizette. Our tummies often will tell us. You ever have people say, go with your gut?
Yes.
And it kind of sounds a little silly in some cases, but the truth is our guts, our stomachs are connected neurologically directly with our brains. There's a very large vagal nerve that connects them. And one of the things about your stomach, if you start feeling butterflies or you start feeling a little nauseous or you just have literally that gut feeling, it's usually because your brain is not paying attention to the signals. There's something that's not right, that your brain is going, Lizette, knock it off. But your brain is like, no, we're going into the brainstem. We're going to act irrational because that's easy. We can do that. And your stomach's like, knock it off. So if we listen to our bellies, our guts a little bit more in terms of what we really know to be the right logical truth, then we can actually use that as, again, positive ways of using that fear to kind of knock ourselves back into a better place. Don't stop telling yourself you're not good. You're fine.
So it's having that internal conversation with yourself. I love that. I love that. I want to shift gear and talk about go back to the beginning about your personal story and what you have learned from it and what you can share with us. I have a daughter and I have a little son, but for me, I feel like for us women, confidence is something that get shed down as we grow, right? So, and I think you mentioned that also in your TED talk, where I highly recommend everybody to go listen to. And so what about women in our brain versus men that make us shed our confidence as we're growing?
I get this question all the time, and I wish
I'm
I
sure.
had I want to have that functional MRI graph to show everyone, engineers and otherwise, here's the difference in the brains. But you know what? There's still not a lot of data or evidence to prove that men and women at this level are that much different. What it really kind of points to is a social, societal difference that men are just as needy of confidence as women, but it manifests differently. And when it manifests into aggressive, overconfident, cocky even behavior, we kind of accept it socially. But those are all signs of lack of confidence. Women, on the other hand, they're subservient, they apologize all the time, they do things that just kind of, is a lack of confidence. And again, socially, we say, well, she's a woman, of course. So it's not that men are less or more confident than women. It's just that when they behave that way, socially, we say they're confident or it's not a problem, right? My famous example of this, and it's a terrible way of doing it, but it's so true. If for some reason, Lizette, I couldn't make your webinar tonight, say I had a family emergency, right? And I had to call you up last minute and say, Lizette, I can't make it. Here's how a guy would do it most of the time. And again, I'm stereotyping and I hate doing that, but a guy would, Lizette, can't be on the webinar. Something's come up. We'll have to reschedule, right? Boom. A woman, tell me, how would a woman call you up? What do you think? How would they call?
I'm so sorry I couldn't make it. I apologize. Let's reschedule as good as possible.
I'm so sorry. Oh my God. Like, please don't hate me. I'm so sorry. And then I have to give you the reason, right? My child, it threw up and I got to go clean it up. And because I don't want you to not like me. I don't want to be, right? The guy, yes, they're concerned about it, but they don't process it that way. They're like, you know what? Stuff happens. Got to reschedule. Lizette, I'm sorry, I can't make it tonight. Let's move on. So again, it's a manifestation of behavior. So With that said, are women really, really apologetic? Yeah, to a fault. Are we subservient? Yes. And again, stereotypical, your results may vary, right?
Yes.
Um, but it's one of those things that I think we have to start teaching ourselves first so that we can share with our children, men and women, girls and boys, that confidence isn't a gender related thing, that it is a matter of being able to recognize the things that trigger us to feel failure, regret, and rejection, and deal with them in a much more productive prefrontal way. That's as clear as it is.
Yeah, amazing. So I want to flip and go into the workplace because I know your podcasts deal with that, and that's something that I will also recommend to listen because you can call in and ask question and it's focusing on the workplace. So my first question is around uh is society, or I want to say corporate America, ready for women or even folks in general to be their whole self and be their confident self at work?
Well, it gets mixed up in one of the words that kind of raises my concern sometimes, which is authenticity, right? That's a word you hear a lot, TED Talks, books, and otherwise, and it gets kind of wrangled in this word of confidence. And the problem for me is that whole self or authentic self doesn't give you the right to be a jerk, right? It doesn't give you the right to show up and be like, girlfriend, that color on you looks terrible. Like that, it doesn't give you that right. And I think people assume that in order for them to be their whole selves, to be their authentic selves, they don't have any filters, they don't have any social grace. And that is completely not true, at least in the philosophy that I follow and the science that I study. That when you are fully confident, you are embracing people's needs as well as your own, but you respect your own as much as you respect everyone else's. And you find a way to harmonize that, you actively harmonize that, so that if I can give you confidence as a colleague, more than likely you're not only going to give it back to me, but I feed my own confidence, right? Because I have the ability to do that. So perfect example is I work with a lot of different companies and I have clients all over, and you ask somebody for feedback, and good feedback, helpful feedback might be, I don't like that color on you for this reason. If you ask me for that feedback, but here's a color that I think would look really great on you. Okay. It's still the same message as like, that color's terrible on you. It's just a much more positive way of doing it. I know it's a Friday night terrible example. Let me try and get a better one for you, your listeners. If you're in a room, for example, and somebody's made a mistake in a presentation. Right? This is probably a much more classic example. Maybe they misquote a number or statistic, and you're sitting there going, "Oh my, that's wrong." If you are not a confident person, you might jump in and be like, "Lizette, that's wrong. That's just not right. You're off by a decimal. That's not true. What's the source of that?" And I know we have listeners out there going, "Oh my God, that's my boss. That's my colleague. Oh, maybe that's them," right? We've all been there. I call that smartest person in the room. A confident person might do it very differently, or might actually hold their concern for after the meeting if that statistic or that error doesn't matter in that context. If it's going to taint a decision, sure. Hey, you know what? I'm a little concerned. Can you give me more background where that number is? That's not the number that I've actually been familiar with. That's a confident answer. Better answer is after the meeting, hey, Lizette, that number you put up, I'm just wondering where you got it from, because I don't want to embarrass you. That's not my goal, right? Not as if I'm confident. A smartest person in the room who shoots you down, makes you feel terrible, they're not trying to be responsible. They're not trying to make everybody else feel better. They're trying to make themselves feel better. So, that's the context that I think we see time and time again in the workplaces. People are protecting their ego. They're fighting for position. They're trying to make other people lose so that they can win. There's not a win-win philosophy. And so you see behaviors like that. You see gossip. You see all kinds of other, bonehead behaviors, as we call it. And in some cases, really vicious behavior that is designed to take people's confidence down. That's bully behavior, not confidence to make, not behavior to make other people feel more confident.
So I love that, because I mean, you say something earlier and you just repeat it in a different way, that other people that try to bully you or attack you, that's also their way of, I guess, showing the lack of confidence, pretty much. And so that's really important, because we society has shown that, you have to be the loudest person in the meeting, you have to be the, I like to call it the jerk in chief, and act like you know everything, or the know-it-all. While for me, I feel like sometimes confidence can be quiet. It can be the quiet person in the room, just raising their hand and just ask the most important question that drive the conversation. So I love that you say that. I know that you do coach company people in company, but what are the company that you coach? What is their goal when they bring you in? For instance, are they trying to get their folks to be more confident, to be bring their whole self to work? Like, I'm trying to figure out, for a company, what will be, the objective in ensure that the employee, understand the science behind confidence.
Yeah. So more than not, I do training, kind of group training. And then depending on the situation, there may be individual coaching with me or some of our other certified coaches. But there's a recurring theme here, which is some people don't feel confident enough to speak up, or to maybe in some senses bring their whole selves to work. They are showing up, but they're not really, they're holding back because they are afraid that somebody's going to shoot them down or belittle them. And at the same time, those people that are doing the shooting are either doing it intentionally, okay, that's unfortunate, but in many cases have no idea that they're doing it, that they're making other people feel very little. I see this more often with very, what I call intellectually competitive industries. So engineering, right? Banking, financial services kind of places, any place that really is more about knowledge working, as opposed to people that are out trying to, build things or what have you. The people that are there that are really, really intellectually driven, they have to be smarter than their colleagues to succeed. So there's a competitive edge here that if you know more and can move faster and can make other people slower and look like they're lagging, you win. That kind of culture is what I get brought in to fix. And so it's an awareness exercise for those people who are kind of or that are the bullies. And for the people that are being bullied, is giving them the tools and the language to be able to address them. So for example, if you're in a meeting and somebody does that smartest person in the room, right? Lizette, that's just wrong. You clearly don't know what you're talking about. And you're standing in front of the room, or maybe you're in a meeting and you're like, I want to just die and crawl under the table, right? Instead of feeling like that, you take that deep breath, that amygdala moment, and magically say, you know what, I could keep my mouth shut and not say anything the rest of the meeting and go in the ladies' room afterwards and cry. I can do that, but I'm not going to do that. What I'm going to do is say, hey, Alyssa, you know what? I appreciate you bringing that to my attention. This is where I got the number, or I will get back to you with the source for that. I do appreciate it, and move on. You just keep moving on. So you choose again to grab that fear, that moment of, I'm so stupid, and go, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. I don't know everything. Nobody knows everything. I had that number for a reason. I will go back and check it, and that's okay. Almost what I did before, not intentionally, but I think it's a good example. I went down a path on an example before in our interview, right? And I'm like, no, that's not it. That's not a good one. So you know what? Instead of going, oh, I'm such a dingbat, let me give you a better example. And that's that decision point at time and time again, when you recognize that you are not bad, that you're not stupid, that you're not any worse off than anybody else. You're human. One of my favorite phrases in the English language is this self-compassion that's so misunderstood, because it means that you acknowledge that you're human and everybody else is too. Yeah, you know what? If you can do it, I can do it too, or at least I can try.
Oh my God. It's one of my favorite things to say too, like, we human, so it's the most basic thing for me. Sometimes when things go really all kind of way, I'm just just like to center myself and say, this is a human being and they're trying to do their best, let's go from that. But I want to ask, because we have the emotional intelligence, we have the IQ, we have EQ. Do we have a confidence a cue to be able to determine and measure, our confidence?
We do. Actually, at the Institute, we have something called the Confidence Quotient. It is an assessment. We do use it. It is a moment in time, though. Unlike the other assessments, intelligent quotient and emotional quotient and any other kind of assessments for the most part, they are measuring a set of variables. I shouldn't even say variables, facts about people. You think or you behave in a certain way. So the output of those assessments are two things. One, they categorize you. You're this kind of thinker, you're this kind of personality, or you're this kind of, right? And they give you letters or beautiful little emojis or whatever it is. And that's who you are. And the second assumption is not only do you fit in that box, but that's the box you're going to be in for the rest of your life. You can't change that. That's fundamentally how those assessments work. When we look at confidence, we know a couple things. One, it changes over our lifetime, right? Depending on what happens to us and how we embrace it, how we utilize those things. But it's also situational. I can talk to you right now and feel great. And then I can leave after this podcast and somebody calls me or something happens and I don't feel so confident because something happens. So it's very temporal, it's very time-based. So when we measure confidence, we look for either, is there something right now that has caused you to have a confidence crisis, right? Maybe there's something at work or in the family, or maybe you just don't feel good. Maybe you put on some weight recently. It could be anything that causes you not to feel confident. But we also make the assumption that it's fixable. It's fixable. Whatever it is that's making you feel lousy, there's a way to fix it. And when there's a will, there's a way. Right. So the first thing to say is, you know what? I don't feel confident because I just put on the COVID-15. Okay. What are you going to do? How are we going to fix that now? Right now, if you think about it, any program that deals with, whether it's alcoholism or smoking or weight or any of the programs out there, first step is, my name is Alyssa, I'm an alcoholic, or you go to Weight Watchers and you say, what, I'm 30 pounds overweight and I'm trying to lose. But part of that process is also not trying to knock off 30 pounds a day or just stop smoking cold turkey. The idea is to take it little bits at a time. We call those small wins. Now, neurologically, small wins really juice up your brain and it makes you feel good. And so the more you get a small win, you want another small win. 2 pounds, I want another 2 pounds, right? And I think people don't remember that confidence isn't, if you're not feeling good about something, you can't just all of a sudden flip a switch, hack it to an extent. It is a process, like you said, it's a lifetime thing. So every time you do something and you go, you know what, that was pretty good. I did that podcast. That was pretty good. My next podcast is going to be even better. You keep building that confidence quotient so that when you do get knocked off your block, like we all do many times in our lives, no matter what, you have a little bit more reserve in the tank, right? Yes, this really stinks right now, but I got through it last time. I'm going to get through it again. So that's all part of the quotient.
Yeah, and I didn't know that, so that's definitely something that I'm curious, and I'm gonna go check it out as soon as we get out of this conversation. But it feels to me that the more you get to feel confidence, it's almost like you can refer back, to your old self and say, okay, I was able to do this, then I can do this again. I was able to do this, then I can do this again. There's one thing that you talk about that I like, because we're gonna start wrapping up here. You talk about Confidence Crusader, so why do we need Confidence Crusader, and what does that mean?
Well, I can only say it in the simplest of way, is that the most powerful, there's 30, 40 tools we've got in the book, in the classes we teach. There's all different ways to help people feel that little endorphin kick. We just mentioned a couple of them, small wins and so forth. There's lots of ways we can contribute to somebody's confidence, but there's one magical tip. Said it at the end of my TED Talk, and I'm going to say it again. By making somebody else feel confident. And the way to do that is to just let them know sincerely that they matter. To make sure they understand that they belong in the world, that they're there for a reason and they matter to you. And it can be something as simple as looking at your child and saying, I'm so happy that you're part of my life. Looking at a friend and saying, you know what, you make my world better. It doesn't have to be a big, expensive gift. It doesn't have to be a huge motion. It can be sending somebody a text right now. If you're listening, you're on the internet, text somebody and just say, I haven't told you in a long time. You really mean a lot to me. That gift of confidence to somebody else is actually a gift for yourself. Because when you can make somebody feel confident, that's a superpower. That is what a superhero does. And if you sit there and say for a second, yeah, I can do that. I just did it. I just made somebody feel really good. I just juiced up their brain with all kinds of beautiful neurotransmitters that makes them feel better about themselves. I can do that for other people. That gives me confidence. It gives it right back.
Yes.
So that's what the crusade is about.
Yeah, and I can definitely testify that this is something that I personally enjoy. I feel like it's a tools, even when I don't feel confident in doing something, and I just magically help somebody, it always come back to you, because for me, I see friends coming back, when I'm really down, I'm going through stuff, and they're repeating stuff that I used to tell them to me, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is working perfectly. So just because of that, I think it's a marvelous thing, because it's always come back to you. It's like you training other people, to be confident, and when you need it, they come back to you. So when I read about Confidence Crusader, I was like, this is like we're on a crusade, because if I'm down on the journey, somebody else can lift me up. So I totally love that. I love that. One other question that I love to ask my guests, because I can talk with you, Alicia, for like the whole day. But one other question that I love to ask my guests is really, what do you do to up your confidence every day? And I'm so curious about that question.
Oh gosh. Well, part of it is making somebody's day every day. That is part of my morning, commitment to the world. I get up out of bed and I'm like, whose day can I make today? And that's part of it, for sure. I think the other part of it is really committing to this kind of work. I mean, I'm sure that your podcast, it looks easy for people watching it. It's a lot of preparation. It's a lot of work, a lot of things that I do. There's days where I don't want to do it because I'm tired, or there's just, other things pulling at me that have maybe more revenue or more opportunity. And at the same time, being really committed to the work and to knowing that it does make a difference. And sometimes you don't see it. Sometimes you don't get it back directly, but it comes full cycle eventually, right? I got an email today, and I should have left it on my screen to read it verbatim. It was actually a LinkedIn message. Somebody who saw me speak 2 years ago, she sent me a note. She said, every day I still think about what you said. It was the best thing I've ever done and heard. And I sent her a note back. I was like, you just made my day. Like, thank you. Like, that's the full cycle. So, making a commitment to something like this, again, I bet some people may say to you, Lizette, you're crazy. Why would you do this? Like, it's nuts, right? It makes a real difference in the world, and it makes a real difference in the people that I care about, because I'm a happier, better person, and I can make them happier, better people too. It's a good day when you can say that.
Oh my, and I can testify that I have been on the receiving end, because when I heard you talk, I was like, I want her on the podcast like right now, but I finally got to it in 2021. And I mean, as I pitch, and like you say, this looks easy, right? But as I pitch to you, you respond so fast that I was like, does she know who she's gonna be talking to? Like, you and your energy, I could feel your energy. So definitely you made my day that day, and you made my day today too. So I'm so thankful for you, and for being a fellow confidence crusader, definitely. And it has been an awesome pleasure to have you on the Up Your Confidence. If there's any last word you want to leave to our listener, I will let you have that.
I think that you are very inspirational in everything you're doing. And I would like to have people like look at this and go, you know what? We're normal people. We're human beings, the two of us, right? And, whether you want to be a confidence crusader, or you just want to go out and be, a magnificent parent, a great manager, just commit to it, do it. And if anyone can do it, so can you, because we can't, here we are doing our thing. I bet 4 or 5 years ago, thinking about doing a podcast was out of your realm of realization, right? I think that that's what it is. And we could tell stories all day long, how and why I got you to do a TED Talk. I was supposed to do a second one actually yesterday,
Oh,
but got canceled with COVID. And you know what? Again, if you read my bio, people are like, oh, she does all this stuff. You know what? I'm human too. So anyone who has a dream and wants to do something and make a difference, just do it. Just do it.
so simple. Just do it. I have it right in front of me here. Just stop talking about it, make it happen, do it. And I did it, I got Alicia on the show and I'm super excited. This is a marvelous day. I'm so excited. Thank you so much. This has been a pleasure. I'm gonna have all your information, your tech talk and everything in the show note. And this is awesome. This can be a gift for a mama, for your kids. Anybody can listen to this and they can really take a lot from it. So thank you so much, Alicia. This
Thank
was
you.
great.
Oh, my pleasure.
Thank you.